All right, everyone, we're live here with Chris Moreno and Adrian Danila. Thanks, gentlemen, for both joining us today. Today's a special episode for the end of the year here. We're talking about 2025 predictions. We're talking about our gifts. So what our gifts are for our audience and the people in the multifamily world, and really kind of laying in a little bit around why this change is going to happen, and then have just a lively discussion about it. So Adrian, Chris, do quick intros, then we'll kind of get into it.
I'll start. Adrian Danila, been in multifamily for 21 years. Currently, I own a advisory firm. I'm also a podcast host. I host about 4 podcasts, different podcasts, and excited to be here today.
Chris? Chris, can you hear us okay?
Did it come off of mute? There we go.
There we go.
Good. I can hear you now. So Chris Moreno, some people call me Mr. PropTech. I love basically the culmination of development, housing, commercial real estate, as well as technology. So love working with really smart people, understanding what they're building. We built a few different companies, one in the package locker space, one in the dry cleaning space, one in the energy space, and then also been in the venture space, investing just in over 140 companies, a few funds, and then invested in some multifamily deals. I'm really excited about this discussion. Thanks for including me. I think one of the key things is looking at the industry of what's worked well. I was talking to someone yesterday, Guillermo, in prep for this. It was interesting to kind of hear their thoughts of almost like the always or never. Is capital going away? Or what are your thoughts for 2025? And I'm like, well, that's a very big topic. And capital is never always going away, but I'm always I have pretty strong beliefs, but I'm always very open to new facts that enter the realm. And I believe a lot in cycles. So I think that's why it's great. Maybe this discussion today is to talk a little about, some of the changes happening in the roles and the topics. So.
Outstanding. And so for everyone listening today, we're going to thinking about setting the structure. We want to talk about these things, predictions as it relates to certain roles in the industry. And of course, the most important role, and no one will ever argue with us in this one, is the resident. So Chris, if you don't mind just carrying on, what did you see in 2024? What do you expect in 2025? And if you could create a gift for every single resident out there, what would that gift look like?
So I think it was actually an event. There was a discussion at NAA, National Apartment Association, last June. And there was a great debate between Steph Berman, Lane Gomez, and Gardner Reese, and all friends who I've known for over 10 years in the industry. And I think one of the things that stood out to me about that discussion that was so fundamental around the resident experience is that the resident has more power than ever before to make decisions, to see testimonials, to see what's happening, and to have influence on someone's property, right? Not only whether it's within their company, if they're in short-term stay or housing, or if it's them as an individual, right? And renting over a year, 2 years, etc. And I think to answer the question, Guillermo, around how I think about what maybe their gift and what they're thinking about, I think one of the coolest things is rewards, or there's some kinds of things that are kickback per se, upfront, hey, you get 2 months free for signing 14 months, or if you sign a unique term, or you're getting some kind of credits towards internet, you're getting credits towards monthly services, you're getting a free parking spot. But I think a lot of those things have become stale. And so I think for me is a unique experiences that really stand out. So I'll call out Daniel Paulino, who I think has a really interesting eye. Daniel's the head of the head of data and marketing at Pizzuto in innovation. And one of the things I love is that they created this incredible video they just shared I think on Monday or last week, and it showed this experience that they try to have at their properties. So I think that's the key thing is how do we get away from the basic to the unexpected event? How do we do a Christmas party for these residents, or ongoing, whether it's fitness courses, whether it's an experience within an app that truly understands them, not necessarily something built by the property management company, but something built by another company that actually is something the residents want. That's what I would love to get them, whether it's, points they can spend, experiences, money back for engaging on maintenance, for telling the property the truth. Hey, there's a leak. Like I remember when I had a leak in my building, Guillermo, and I told the property manager, I called security, they didn't care. The water was piling up in the hallways. I called the property manager, who was like the vice president of the company, who lived in the building. And he goes, "What the hell, Chris? Oh my God." I'm like, "Is this always?" Like, "Thank you for calling me." It was 10 o'clock at night. Security wasn't responding. And he was like, "This is going to be a several $100,000 to $1 million issue. You should be rewarding residents that take this proactiveness when sometimes a resident or sometimes an app can't respond." So those are some things I think I would give them holistically, is better experiences, better rewards, engage them more. And I think some companies are doing a good job of that.
Interesting. Adrian, what's your take?
I think that we're we're going towards a more Uber like Amazon like type of experience for the residents. These two platforms have raised the bar so high that we're gonna have to follow. And we have another component, the hospitality component. Chris mentioned royalty programs. That's amazing. That's what we have to do. And then remember, there's a very little branding that's being done in, like, it's not very prevalent in a multifamily industry. I think that companies should really focus on branding more, like for their brand to be recognized. So when someone is looking to move out, they relocate to another city, they should be looking for your property in another city, right?
So do you mean like kind of like about the hospitality side, like
Yes,
Hyatt, JW, Courtyard, that kind of cascading branding?
100%. I'm seeing like it's a need for it, and then actually the public is is craving this, and we don't have it in the industry. Just like hospitality has it for decades now. I'm definitely seeing a surge next year in resident-centric tech solutions, self-service leasing, maintenance apps, AI-powered communication, giving the residents more control of how they want things done, not just us telling them how to, how we do things, more like them deciding how they want to communicate, how they want things resolved.
And it's interesting, really good point. Like you talk about like the Amazon, the Uber side of things, right? Like, Uber will be, and both in Amazon, they did something famous around taking away the work, right? Like I'm finding that like there's a really good book written a few years back called Effortless Experiences, and it's about the consumer experience. It starts a lot about banking and finance and products, but like I would like to see, so to follow on both your points, a centralized way of communicating, make it easy to be a resident. Like I had a chat yesterday where some residents have like 5 apps for 5 different things. That makes no sense. If you're the customer, and now you have, what I've been really interesting is that not only is the demographic, is there so much more supply, like you mentioned, Chris, like we've got like 95%, 94% of national occupancy and more supply coming online that's being absorbed. But like people are mobile more than ever before. And so you're not just like stuck in a unit or stuck in a lease. You can move around. And because residents have that power of choice, retention becomes that strategy. And so to both your comments, like, how are we going to keep that resident in one spot? How are we going to keep them happy? And I think there's 2 kind of perspectives. Like at least we take like other industries, right? Let's think of how we can make it better. Let's how we can not make it worse. Like how can we raise the floor of what that resident experience looks like so that's easy, And I think that maybe you're right, Chris, like an AI powered app, some sort of smart home. Like I really believe that we're going to see a massive arc of that smart home or smart unit work just to make it simpler, because we just expect that in our life. The Uber, the Amazon, that's just what we expect. Now, do you think, how is that going to happen?
It's going to be a gradual, it's going to be a gradual transition. Multifamily hasn't been great in like embracing technology immediately and moving very fast.
Yeah.
As probably most of us, here on the panel, or all of us know, the sales cycle in multifamily it could be pretty long, right? So the expectations, although they are on a resident's behalf, most companies will not move as fast. It takes a very long time to make a decision, 2-3 resident cycles maybe. But I think that we will see movement. Some of the companies will be so eager to actually raise the bar that they will be moving quicker than others, a very few. Most of them will move too, will kind of like, dip their toe in the water, but it's not going to be overnight type of, change. And, it's going to take longer than just in 2025.
Do you think that like the Chris, will go to you on this, the natural kind of setup of a multifamily where you've got LPs, owners, operators, PMCs, managing companies, and then residents, like, does that block adoption to change?
So I think a couple things. I think if you think about hospitality, like, and Adrian kind of maybe hit on this in a different way, is like when people own multifamily apartment buildings, it's very long-term thinking, right? Oftentimes they're not thinking about today, tomorrow, this month. Whereas if you think about Airbnb, you think about a hotel, you think about many other types of spots, even like you think about co-working. Oftentimes they're renting for a day, a week, a month. And multifamily people tend to stay for years. So I think to Adrian's point, like, there's a lot of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We had a guest in the maintenance space, from Brookfield, and he shared, there's always been this mentality where people recommend from the property or site level, we need to do X, we need to do Y, whether it's maintenance, whether it's an experience, whether it's an upgrade to a space and investing some dollars. Yet oftentimes the corporate level says no. And I used to be in that world. I used to be at Macy's corporate on the procurement team. And when we were looking at 250 stores, and then which turned into 800 stores, and then to hear from one store that this store or this location wants X, it's going to cost me $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. It's hard to say, well, at the corporate level, if I do that for them, I need to be consistent across my portfolio. That's going to cost me, $8 million. So that's really hard for me to justify. And so a lot of things at localized teams and corporate teams, there's sometimes that separation. So I get really excited, I think, to Adrian's point, where if what I learned to do was to say, it's almost like what 7-Eleven does with their franchisees, what McDonald's does with their franchisees, what some corporate stores and even Whole Foods will allow. The Whole Foods is owned by one conglomerate, but they allow the local manager to make about 10% of their decisions for localized decision making. Same thing with 7-Eleven. About 10% of their products, 15% can be actually bought locally, or they can pull in unique experiences. So I think that's the discrepancy I'm seeing with multifamily. Multifamily has traditionally been known as one of the slowest groups to move because they tend to have a pretty good fill rate, right? Traditionally a 94 to 97% fill rate. Right now, some are down to 90. So you are seeing people, hey, what do we need to do? That's not good.
Oop.
We're going to have something else happens. We're going to invest in experiences. We're going to invest to keep up. I think that's the key thing that people need to do. And I think a lot of people I've been talking to at leadership levels, they're going out and looking at what the shopping centers are doing. They're going out and looking at what the hotels are doing. They're going out and seeing creative marketing and experiences. They're seeing what Disney does. I mean, Disney, let's think about Disney World. And I love, actually, I don't go to Disney World that much, but I study Disney because Disney isn't just in the entertainment business. They're actually in the housing business, right? They house employees. They're building homes. They're building apartments. They're building hotels. They're building all of this in addition to just rides. So I think they're one of the best, most experienced people who understand the full life cycle from cradle all the way to grave of someone's life, of what they need and what they want. So
I see that. I can see that. I definitely. I definitely think look at 2025. There's going to be a lot more people that come into the industry that haven't been in the industry before, just because of the ageism and so on and so on. There's going to be a whole lot of new ideas, and I do like your point. We've kind of seen it in 2024, a bit in 2023, where people are coming in from the hospitality side. There's people that come from all different sorts of industries, like a Disney, that bring in fresh ideas and new ways to operate this industry. And it's going to become, there's going to be some friction because there's going to be some old ways of doing things and new ways of doing things. And I do like let's not, there was an expression, an old leader that I used to have said, do not waste a good crisis, right? And so let's take this opportunity to begin to innovate and change things. And so what I think is really interesting to see, and this might be kind of moving to the next question, is around where is this innovation going to start, right? Is it going to happen in the markets that are most, Adrian, to you, is it going to happen in the markets that are can afford the money? I'll put it this way. Is it how the markets that can afford to do it, or the ones that can't afford not to do it?
Well, I think, it's not a one size fits all, because, you're looking at, I think, mainly two types of technology. It's technology that, you must have. If you have a certain goal, you cannot actually achieve that goal. You cannot execute without technology, or a nice to have. Let's just say an example. You work and your property management system is Yardi. Yardi has the basics for maintenance workflows, right? So you don't need anything else. You're good. But then there's amazing things out there, programs that have been built that actually do a lot more than what Yardi does. And it becomes, from a owner's perspective, a nice to have. Should we really buy this product? And then what's going to be our return on investment, right? That's one. And then there's another one. If you want to do centralization, well, there are certain softwares that they don't have the capability to serve you if you're centralizing certain functions. They haven't adapted. But then others, actually, they're catering towards that particular situation. And then it's kind of like must have. And there's another must have too I'm thinking about. Keyless locks. When you're trying to do centralization, especially for maintenance, you got to get rid of the keys altogether. You should have access on your phone. Travel, open doors, close doors, move from property to property. Don't have to worry about managing keys. That's a time sucker, and then it creates so much headache. Imagine that you're at a property A, the phone rings, you got to run to property B. You always going to have a key in your pocket from property A when you leave.
Sure.
And imagine the chaos that creates. Now let's chase down a key and bring the key back because there's somebody else needed it, or there's a security concern if we don't get it back. So
that's zero value work. That is effort. That could be 4, 5, 6 hours that created zero value.
100%, and 100% on top of windshield time that you're already adding. When you're talking about maintenance centralization. So there's just one more challenge. Again, technology in place, and then seamless access control. You must have them in place if you want to be successful. If you want to have a chance at being successful, there's not a guarantee you're going to be successful with centralization. That's another conversation.
Yep. Okay. So residents, 2024, a lot of supply came online. Going to continue going on for 2025. The residents going to be more power than ever before. And our gift to residents is make it easy to be a resident. Make it easy to let me buy from you and keep buying from you. And we see that happening through technology, a single app instead of 5 apps, smart controls to make it just easy to be that resident, and let me make it easy to keep me giving you money. I want to keep giving you money because that's easier to do. Make it easy for me to do that. All right. So the next one, and Chris, you kind of leaned in on this a little bit already. Property managers. What did you see? Adrian, why don't you kick this off? What did you see in 2024? What do you expect for 2025? What's the gift for property managers?
You want Chris to go or me?
Well, why don't you go first? Chris kind of leaned in on it, so we'll start with you and then roll over to Chris.
Yeah, I see the property management role becoming more of a facilitator, using technology, leveraging technology more than ever before, and allowing more time for resident engagements. I'm also seeing many companies are actually hiring concierge to help with the resident relations, even though some of the functions are moving offsite, like rent collections and things of that nature, and evictions, they're moving offsite, right? They're also bringing in personnel and technology to create that concierge experience, that high-end hotel experience. We're talking about mainly lease ups. Also, I think there's something to be said about amenities. I think there's a trend out there that I never seen before. We had a conversation, Chris and I, on a podcast just last Thursday, and there's amenities out there that I never thought of before, like podcast studio. You know,
Really?
yes, you know, or like share spaces for office for someone that doesn't want to go like 3-5 miles to rent an office, rent a cubicle in a random place. They could actually have, they could run their business at a community just by having renting a place out there for business. So
Wow.
those are some things that are happening, like I said, especially on the lease ups, right? Not as add-ons for older properties. And then
Mhm.
I think my gift for property managers is a comprehensive training program for them to be able to absorb all this technology and be able to handle it like a boss.
Yep. I, I'm. We'll wait till mine, but I think we're gonna be very aligned. Chris, go ahead. What do you think? What did you see in 2024? What do you see in 2025? What's a gift for property managers?
Yeah, I think a couple things come to mind, but I think a wish list. So if you think about, if I'm a property manager and I know my residents better than anyone should, right? I'm going to know the challenges. They're pinging me, they're texting me, they're emailing me, they're calling me, they're seeing me in the hallway. If I'm an effective property manager, right? More than my regional or my vice president or the owner.
Mhm.
And I think what I hear owners who tell me, I trust my property manager. I know them by name. I know that they are incredibly important. That's why we pay them the larger dollars, is to manage these teams. So I think one of the key things is what is their wish list? Just like my kids, what do
Mhm.
they want for Christmas? What is this property manager? What is standing out as like one of their top? If they had to pick one, what would it be the investment they would make if it was their own dollars into the property? And what would change the game, not only for the resident, what would change the game for them and their staff? And does that mean some kind of B2B tool that's like an AI tool? Is it a system of training? Is it
Mhm.
a event? Is it an ongoing event? Is it well-being? So does it mean, like, I'll give you an example, like Adrian mentioned, where I work they do wellness days every single month. So you know, it's like the second Wednesday of the month, they're doing a wellness day, and they bring in yoga. They bring to do yoga for 2 hours. They bring in 2 massage chairs, and they have 15-minute massages, and you can just sign up in the app and get free massages. They do a mental wellness coach who comes in that they pay for to give mental wellness coaching, and it's all free, and it's incredibly unique, and that's hundreds of dollars of value to each individual. It doesn't cost them that much. But I think about it, like even having the yoga and having the training on site, even if it was once a week, whether people use it or not, to me is irrelevant. It's what they want. It's what they know that someone's willing to do for them, to invest in them. And then I think
Sure.
also for the team, if the team is active in it, the team is like, hey, I can participate in this. I'm excited. I'm going to get a chair massage as well as the residents. I think ice cream days or pizza days, those have become tired, as many people will say. But I really do believe that if the property manager says, this is what I can do, there's an ROI, and it's not so much it's not the dollar ROI as much as it's the social ROI for people then to also communicate it.
Sure.
Because one of the things we hit on is like those metrics. Some of these metrics are hard to show an actual ROI or NOI sometimes. I think some people are stretching for the numbers, as Adrian said. And what's more important is like, we know they're important. It's no longer a debate whether your metrics on Google being a 3.1 star, or some properties used to be 1.5 or 1.7s because they didn't care. And now you see properties at 4.8. And I'm
Right.
almost going to guarantee you 2 properties being next to each other within half a mile, quarter mile, being all things pretty equal, and one having a 4.8 review with 800 reviews, and one being a 2.9 or a 3. Even a 3.9. Not that much of a discrepancy, or 4.2 versus 4.8, and a lot fewer reviews. I almost can guarantee you're going to see a different rate of rent. You're going to see a different occupancy. You're going to see a different retention. You're going to have, probably if you did surveys internally, you're going to see different problems happening. So to me, it is what isn't so much always going to be an exact now dollar change. It's going to be an investment that we're going to see maybe a return in staff culture, resident feedback, retention, and then also reviews heading up. Because I think at the end of the day now, many people are graded less on the exact financial as actually in the return of the retention. I'm seeing many more companies moving towards reviews just for those types of things.
So do you think, so then, and then of course, like you mentioned earlier, autonomy over budget, local autonomy, so they can make their own decisions, right, and be, trusted with that kind of budget to be able to do things that are local.
You used to see a lot of that back in the day, a lot more when companies were smaller. Then it moved to centralization where we're going to take that away from the person. Now I'm seeing a return back. Now, obviously, that's why, like, I'm seeing what was great this year was talking to people as they were doing their budget camps and flying everyone in or having everyone go to a central hub, spending a couple days, doing it together. And because you have to trust these people to be a part of the process, because if you have a plan for next year, if you have a plan every year, every quarter, and they're not a part of it, they're not going to be engaged. They're not going to believe in it. If they didn't have a say, then it's not going to be successful, in my opinion. So how do you give them even a small budget? It doesn't have to be 10%. It doesn't have to be 20%. It might even be 3%. It might be 1%. But it needs to be meaningful to them that they're like, I was a part of this decision. And I'm even seeing people who are in companies, and Adrian and I were just at an event in Scottsdale, Patrick Antrim's event. And the cool thing is seeing some people there there was VP, regional, and even a property manager who were on their technology innovation team for their company. And they got sent to that event, and they have say across the company.
Very interesting.
All having a different opinion.
They're pulling from the field. I think that, like, when you take a look at like the role itself, like with the high turnover that's associated with that role, I mean, what you're talking about is like, this is a formalization as you're part of the management structure. You're an extension of the management structure instead of just being kind of like a replaceable part. And as you start seeing a formalization of these operating structures, like centralization does, you have to have that kind of like trusted person on the ground that has autonomy, has decision rights, can buy, can hire, fire, retain, that kind of thing, in that space. And so, I'm with you both in terms of like, we're going to retain property managers because they're the ones that are going to help to retain the residents. And so they're going to feel a lot of change this year because centralized workflows are going to take off, or at least that's I'm bearing the lead for my next prediction, but centralized workflows are going to take off. It's just going to be easier. There's just no people, right? Like the OpEx of it all is a very compelling argument, but I'm just like looking at the numbers, like with the amount of supply coming online and the amount of people required to manage that supply, it doesn't divide by zero. It's an error formula. And so these people are going to become more, to your point, Adrian, the hotel concierge. They're going to be more the hand-to-hand responsive, but they're going to work within a system that is more predictable, reliable, optimized. And so I'm like you, Adrian. I think that they're going to be, it might even be a new job description of what we understand it to be in the past. And it's going to be, I really hope that there is an investment in educating the property managers about AI, about centralization, about optimization, and elevate that role to an extension of the executive. I mean, extension of the operating organization, because it's going to be such a critical role to help residents through this transition and activate the rest of the organization for centralization. Because I believe that if the property manager is not bought in, it's not going to happen. And then these roles are so hard to staff that they have more power than they might appear on the organizational chart. Okay, the fun one, ops and maintenance managers. Chris, why don't you kick this off? So 2024, what did you see? 2025, what do you predict for ops and maintenance? And then what kind of gift would you like to give them? Oh, you still there? I'll jump to Adrian while your audio gets back. Adrian, why don't you jump ahead?
My favorite topic.
Mine too.
With my favorite people. So 2024, we've seen a surge in nice to have products, right? As I was saying, everybody kind of has, their AppFolio, their Yardi, their Entrada, basic functions for the maintenance workflows. But we're starting to see, more companies, going to get, other products. Their specific maintenance workflows, right, as add-ons to improve the resident experience and the employee, the maintenance technician experience, make it easier and capture more data with that. So that's what we're seeing. We're going to continue to see that in 2025. You'll be amazed how large of percentage of the market still does pen and paper type of thing. Or if they have a Yardi, they print, someone in office prints the work orders, and that gives them away, splits them between the text. They write some notes down, they bring them back to the office. We're in 2025. It's still happening. So that's still going to move. Now, what I'm seeing, I'm going to see like another thing I think this is, people think it's a nice to have until the disaster hits them. When the disaster hits them, they're going to realize they can't live without it. And this is these are the predictive sensor systems, right? They could prevent floods. They could prevent pipe freezes, not pipe freezes, but the water damage that's following that.
Yep.
They could prevent fire in your kitchen. They could prevent a lot of mold incidents and just leaks in general, right? Until probably like whoever has them a harsh winter, they're already like pulling their hair out, and they're saying, how are we gonna deal with millions of dollars worth of insurance claims? We all know the insurance companies are slow to pay, and also they're hurting too. They pull completely out of certain markets because they can't really make the numbers work. Or they're still the ones that are left are like 3, 4, 5 times the rate. So there's a situation here that it's being created. It's kind of like the perfect storm for predictive maintenance to take place. But I don't think it's gonna take place naturally. With people saying, okay, we're gonna prevent this from happening. It will, but just a little bit, a small percentage. The biggest percentage is going to be they're getting hit with a freeze, with a flood, very costly flood. They learn about this product, they're going to embrace it. And going forward, they can't live without it.
So how are they going to do the predictive maintenance with, like, we talked about earlier, if they're still on pen and paper? Like, that's kind of like table stakes to do predictive maintenance, right? Or do you think they'll start with scheduled maintenance and work their way there?
I think that you could implement, 2 things at the same time. These predictive maintenance sensors, they have their own platforms, most of them, to actually show people on an app how things work. But then integration might not be with Yardi. They might need to be with a maintenance specific app. So they might be coming in tandem in a package. They might penetrate a old school company at the same time. When a disaster happens, they'll look at the predictive stuff and they'll say, well, it's not really working greatly with like our old pen and paper stuff. So we got to bring something to actually integrate and work in tandem, do a package. So I think that's an opportunity for both of those companies, right? For the sensors company, for the maintenance workflow company to team up and actually do packages and make those offers together, because there's win-wins.
Do you think, like, just using your examples there, do you think that like climate variability, climate change, climate variability is going to be the driving force between some of that IoT, some of that predictive infrastructure?
I think it's actually like the seasons. When it's getting really cold, pipes break. It's what it is. We've been experiencing this for hundreds of years. And then when it's very hot and humid for 8 to 10 months a year, like Florida, you have humidity. When there's humidity, there's going to be mold, right? So you gotta have to control the humidity levels and everything. And also every drop of water could turn into mold in like 24 hours because of the favorable environment, right? You have
Mhm.
moisture and you have warm temperatures in there. So I think I don't think that's like, any climate related situation. It just is, right? I think
Yep.
more than anything, it's educating the customer, educating the operator, because a lot of them don't necessarily know that those solutions exist, believe it or not.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I can see all that. Chris, what's your take?
So I got a crazy take here. I think we're going to see, because you're already seeing it happen and you're hearing about it. I think number one, obviously things are getting centralized, but for some companies, it's still a headache. I think to Adrian's point, I completely agree. More preventative stuff, more things especially because insurance premiums are skyrocketing and the insurance costs are going up. Insurance companies aren't going to pay the same of what they're going to pay. I just talked to an owner who had a $2 million insurance claim, and the insurance company offered him $600K. So there's a $1.4 million delta on that water leak and that water issue within the building. I know about someone else who had a 1.1 million, and the insurance company I think offered about 400 or 500,000. So again, you're seeing anywhere from a 30% to a 70% discrepancy between insurance payouts. Deductibles are skyrocketing. I'm hearing that across the board. I'm hearing people, it's obviously a big discussion in Florida, but it's happening across the country where premiums are skyrocketing, deductibles are going up, issues. That relates directly to the upkeep and the maintenance and the investment in the property itself. And if a resident is not alerting you to it, if a resident is not updating it, or you're not listening, when I say you, the maintenance is recommending we do something, but the company is deciding not to, there's going to be an issue there. And any owner is now being, you used to hear the stories of like, oh man, we didn't do enough diligence, and we missed this in the diligence of buying this property. Well, you don't see that really much anymore because of technology. Now they walk every unit, they check, like Adrian said, they're checking for mold, they're checking for issues, they're assuming the worst because they've seen it before.
Yeah.
And so now if you underinvest as you own that asset, or do things to shortcut, and you try to go sell the asset, you're now going to be devalued by what I'm hearing, a much greater multiple upon going to sell, which is going to impact your LPs, your investors. So it's better to do that maintenance ongoing, whether that's, and to Adrian's point, whether it's a consistent maintenance plan. And that, for some companies, it might mean moving away from their own staff, right? If they're looking to cut costs and do scale, it's hard to find great staff nationwide right now. It's finding partners. And I think it's going to be more and more partnerships. And I'm not kidding when I say this. It's probably, I think there's a balance of residents doing their own things. Because if you think about it, some of these residents or third-party companies in the field that many people are already trusting and using as vendors. But if you can now actually, if your staff can only do so many things, but you can actually outsource it to third parties or a resident and say, hey, this person is insured, or this is a low enough level. It's not high voltage. It's not incredible, but this person knows how to do it. I'm going to reward that.
It's replacing a filter. It's flipping a GFCI.
Fixing something on site, it's almost like Pokemon Go. But obviously, it depends on the level, and you want to make sure it's done correctly. But if there is something that residents are actually gamified to call out things, to request things, and then to ensure they got done, that is actually a great thing. So I believe there's a book about this, Guillermo, called Radical Candor.
Yeah.
And it's about someone who worked at Apple and a few other firms. And she talks about, you want to know when something's wrong. You want your residents to actually tell you before they move out, and by the way, if they tell you, if they don't tell you, if they tell you, it's a gift. A complaint is a gift. If they don't tell you, they probably told 30 other people, and they're going to move out. You're going to lose them, and you could have solved the issue that could actually increase the value of your property. So what I found is, even though the resident doesn't own the property, if they can be incentivized to help the property, like I really cared about the apartments I lived in. When I had a water leak, to Adrian's point, I'm going to share a quick example of this. I had a water leak in the last apartment we rented about 6 years ago. We rented in San Francisco, and it was leaking. Our landlords lived upstairs and downstairs. It was 3 days. And upstairs, they had a leak coming into our apartment through the ceiling of the bathroom. And it was a broken pipe. Well, they were in their 90s. So I said, you know what? Like they were like, oh, and I was like, we need to handle this. It's either you do it or I do it. And they said, well, we don't know what to do. I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take care of this. I sent them a little thing. I said, I'm going to take care of this and I'm going to pay for it and I'm going to have you reimburse me. I literally did it. And I did it from start to finish. I got 3 bids. I didn't just get the first person, Roto-Rooter or whoever came out. I got 3 bids, got it done properly, went through. It was, a 80-year-old, 90-year-old pipe. And I paid out of my own pocket and then got reimbursed by them. Mm-hmm. And I didn't make, just wanted to make sure it was done right for them and for me, because I knew we were going to be moving at some point. But I think that is the future, is how do you engage your residents? How do you engage your staff to do the right things for the business, to think like owners? And I think that's going to be a challenging chasm, because not everyone can feel like an owner if they don't actually own anything. But if there were some kind of incentives to do these kinds of actions, and I know there's companies out there who kind of do these things.
But you're talking about partnership, right? It's a partnership between the operator, the owner, and the renter. And so you've got this kind of like, I love what you're predicting on, is that ultimately, like, their home, their residence, and a resident is the word resident is irrespective of ownership position, right? Renter is different, owner is different, but if you're a resident, you occupy a space, and the value exchanges make it safe, make it easy, make it comfortable, warm, and stuff like that. Things like maintenance are kind of like perks. Like you as an owner, you're inclined to maintain it because it's your asset. But ultimately, when things go wrong, the resident feels downtime. The furnace stops working, AC stops working, the plug stops working, the disposal stops working. And that's painful. And so how can we relieve the pain from the resident? How can we create an experience that is aligned with what, like, that treats them as a partner in the relationship rather than just a consumer in the relationship? And I think that's a very curious, that there's another conversation there on that, because like the resident's obligation to report, not obligation, but like partnership or permission to report issues that are happening, to have that transparent line creates a much better living arrangement for everyone. And so when I take a look at what I'm looking at, 2024, you've got proof of the nice to haves that you talked about, Adrian. They proved out. They penciled out. They saved 15, 20%, whether it be whatever investment you chose to take. I mean, smart operations can save 7%. IoT can say this, can say that. And so you're starting to see that happen. And so the penciling of these investments is already proven. There's case studies, all that. Us as vendors, we love telling you the case stories of how much somebody else saved. You should consider that. And so when I take a look at 2025, we're going to see the data fabric, the leaders, the data fabric has already been established, and they're going to start experiencing an accelerated rate of return in a period where that accelerated return is so important on those savings. So they're going to save more, operate better, get better cap rates than those that are operating poorly. And there's going to be a big division between those that are technology enabled and those that are not. And that gap is going to show up in vendors willing to work with you, people willing to work for you, residents willing to stay at your places. And it's going to come down to, like, how do you compete? Like, it's not going to be location anymore. Do you compete on an operational efficiency? Do you compete on customer intimacy, or compete on product? And in our world, product is like, if you've got a building on a cliff that overlooks Cabo San Lucas, well, you're competing on product. You can do whatever you want. You're going to be full. But if you're in downtown Atlanta, downtown Austin, you're not competing on product anymore because the product is out there. And so it's going to be really, to follow in both your comments, both those, how can we make it easier for those ops and maintenance managers to deliver that better strategy in which how you compete? And so if you're competing on cost, which most people do in this space, then let's make that more efficient. Let's make it more reliable. Let's not be so vulnerable on people, so that we can make the employees partners, the residents partners, with the ownership group to be able to provide a great living experience. So my gift to the ops and maintenance managers is data and AI-driven maintenance programs that can do the IoT, that can do the predictive that you talked about, and moving into prescriptive. So going even one step further, where you're prescribing the specific program that needs to be delivered based on data, not based on schedule, not based on usage, but based on the circumstances that are prevailing within that specific that building or unit. And I do think that that's, we're going to see the infrastructure for that. It's going to have to be an investment, and the ROI for that investment might not be evident in year one, but ultimately you got to have centralized Wi-Fi, managed Wi-Fi to put in smart locks. Otherwise, you're going to go crazy. And so, like, monetizing those different pieces of infrastructure in order to create that environment, to make it easy for ops maintenance managers, something that I hope people invest in. And they're going to find that I hope they find that without it, you're going to be hurt on the revenue and the resident side of things. Moving along to regional asset managers. So, Chris, your audio's back, full strength. You're talking about regionals or asset managers. What did you see in 2024? What do you expect to see in 2025? What gift would you give them?
I think they're under more pressure to perform. Generally, they're getting more and more assets, more properties, more staff and or less staff. It depends, but more responsibility, right? So if they were watching over 3 properties, now are now watching after 7. If they're watching over, some people I know are watching over 14. It all depends. But I think, what I would think about is how do we help them while they're traveling, traversing, trying to be in multiple places at once, overseeing geographies. And that might be, a virtual assistant, right? It might be an assistant for them, or a virtual assistant, or someone who's helping them, because travel is a real thing. Traffic is a real thing. And most of these people I know are trying to get to their sites, or they work out of one of their sites certain days of the week, right? Mm-hmm. Many people I know will work a day in a site and travel around, and that's the way they like to do it. Others work out of their home or a hub, but that in between time, they're trying to get things, responsiveness and things done. So I would say probably a virtual assistant. And I'm like, oh, virtual assistants are amazing because people can share them, right? You don't have to have one. You can have an assistant who's shared among a team. And I think it's one of the greatest unlocks. And we all need help in different ways. So I think also they're in terms of like what they're going to be focused on for the new year is how to engage their teams to be stronger. So that's what I'm hearing from folks is it's all about culture. At the Multifamily Summit last week or 2 weeks ago, we spoke with someone out of the Carolinas who's phenomenal. And I'll just mention her name, Mary Gwynn. They manage, I think, over 5,000 units, 6,000 units. She was on our podcast as well, and she's fantastic. She's all about culture. She's all about the team. Because if you don't empower the team and they don't feel respected, they don't feel like they can make decisions, they don't feel like they can trust the mission. And I think these regional teams are so important because they are the glue between the on-site and the glue to the corporate. And if you fracture that chain, you have a complete disconnect, and there is that lack of honesty, that lack of actual accountability between the teams and the corporate teams. And that's where people miss their mark. That's where there's a disconnect of where people are shocked or surprised about missing their mark in their goals for the year, the quarter, or even the month.
So I have a question for you. When people talk about culture, a lot of people immediately kind of jump to that's a people thing, more people, more culture, more people. In your mind, how does centralization and culture, how do they play together?
I think it's I'll defer to Adrian if you want to answer that first, because I think
go for it, Adrian. How does that work?
Adrian loves that.
I think culture change is one of the hardest things, especially if we're thinking maintenance facility side. Typically, the maintenance teams are very resistant to change, right? And this is a disruption. It's not just a change. So getting the buy-in, explaining the whys is going to be crucial, right? Because if you're not getting the buy-in, if you're not getting your teams to support the program, it's gonna make it very hard to implement, right? You don't want to try to go against the wind with implementation. If you start that way, it's just gonna be a long, painful process.
And so do you think that like from the maintenance side of things, I mean, or ops, I'll say the field level, that the story about culture, if I'm a field ops person and I hear the story about culture that Chris is talking about, and then the operational efficiency that we're talking about from a centralization piece, how does that sit on my chest? How am I scared about that? Is that an opportunity? How is that landing to me as I'll say the typical field ops person?
Culture is an opportunity always, almost, for for companies. And then you want to talk about not just one culture in general, because no company has one culture. You're gonna have the culture that's being part of that vision when the higher ups got together in a room and they decided what they want the culture to be. So that's one thing. The second thing is the culture at the corporate office level. How are they living that culture that they decided that they're going to follow? So, but the real behavior regarding the culture, that's the second one. The third one, it's a regional culture, which is typically driven by regional managers. You could tell when you go to a larger company who works for which regional manager, because you see patterns in properties managed by the same regional manager if they have long enough time to kind of put their print on, make a difference on the site team cultures, right? And then the last culture that I see, it's the site team culture, which is driven by mainly community manager, of course, with an influence from regional manager and from corporate, but mainly it's gonna be the community manager. And sometimes if they have a seat at the table, service manager as well, right? When they're really working as a team, these are the two individuals that are actually building that culture, and obviously everybody else kind of joins the culture. So it's a pretty complex conversation when it comes to culture, right? It's not as simple because there's several, as I said, cultures within an organization. So,
gotcha. What do you see in 2024? What do you see in 2025 for regionals and asset managers?
For regional and asset managers, I see increased pressure, right? Increased pressure for them. Chris mentioned that, and I totally agree. They're going to probably get more deals to manage. They're going to be handed more pro formas that are hard to meet, hard to execute, to make happen. And a lot of times they're just not realistic. They're impossible, right? They're just things that are done on a corner of a table, on a piece of paper, just to make the numbers work because we need to get the investors to invest. But they don't represent the reality in the field. Like, this is more and more the case, right? People don't talk about it this much, but I'm seeing it on a daily basis. I see it all the time. And then you had that situation that you created, which is not a winning situation. Let me just say that. You hand it to the site operation team and say, you got to make things work. Well, kind of hard to pull that magic. A lot of times it's impossible. So that creates extra pressure, a lot of turnover, a lot of headache at the site level. I see those numbers increasing because I don't think that 2025 is going to be a year of smooth sailing. There are going to be a lot of opportunities, but now I think that a lot of people are looking and hoping there was a political change at the very top, and now with Trump coming into power, things will go immediately improve. We're all hoping that that's the case, but I would just say these are not things that happen just overnight. And I think 2025, I think 2025 is not gonna be the year. Maybe we'll start seeing if it's gonna go that direction, we're going to start to see the signs on a second part of the year, but don't really expect the January 1st or January 20. Things are just gonna change like night and day. They don't happen that way. They didn't get to where we are today that way, overnight. So they're not going to change the other way around overnight. It's just a process. People have to, and going back to what Chris just said, cycles. Totally. That's an amazing observation. I'm also a believer in cycles too. Real estate has its cycles. So
I mean, I think there is a housing shortage. That is a problem, right? I mean, and it's getting absorbed. It's coming online. Put 500,000, 500,000 units came online last year, probably 500,600 this year. And so like you've got this oversupply. And so these asset managers, regional managers, they're feeling unique pressure in Austin that you're not feeling in Boston, or Atlanta is feeling different. So they're not going to have fair treatment within their corporate organization because it's going to be worse in some places than other places. And so, I've actually changed my gift because of this conversation today. But I agree with Chris's point. They are going to become over portfolioed. I was talking to a VP at MFE Connections, and she was reviewing 50 budgets that week, right? Like for different roll-ups. And that's what she's trying to get to her plan together, right? And when I think about that, and then everything else that a regional and an asset manager is accountable for, my gift to regionals and asset managers is a peer in the maintenance and ops space. And so they can relieve them from the operating functions and they can work on the financials. Because what I've seen when I talk to a lot of asset and regionals, they've got this roll up of if there's no regional manager for maintenance or ops, they're doing it as well, in addition to doing all the paperwork. And so my gift to them is a peer at that level who's responsible for the OPEX part of the P&L. Because my prediction was a dashboard, or my gift was initially a dashboard and KPIs so they can do their job better with more resilience. But I just don't, your comments around how can that doesn't solve the problem, because the problem is they're being asked to do different roles. And so that's my gift. My gift is that they have a peer. Where we have nationals, we've got national maintenance and ops. Where we've got regionals, or statewide, we've got statewide, regional and ops, or maintenance and ops. And the same thing, where a whole maintenance and ops functions emerges, and they get basically their variable pay related to retention, right? And it's, what does that res experience feel like, Chris?
So I gotta jump because I gotta go. This has been great. And the last thing I want to add is I would probably give to someone who's been through a lot of cycles just a bicycle, so they can just go through. They're reminded of the cycles in their life. So if they don't have a bicycle, I think a crucial gift is some kind of bicycle. Not only is it hilarious, maybe, but it's spot on for thinking about what Adrian and what we're all talking about, which is we're going to live. There's that Chinese proverb where they say, "Oh wow, your son, he did so well in school. Congratulations." And I think they say, this too will pass. And then something bad happens. He breaks his ankle. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened. Yes, this too will pass, right? And so those consistent ups and lows tend to even out. And we need to plan for those. We need, when people say, oh my God, interest rates are so high. No, they're not. Interest rates were so low. Well, yes, they were. But do we think they'll actually go down? I don't think they're that high right now. I think they're just high relative to where we were for a couple of years, not for the last 25 or 30 years. So I think too many people are trying to sometimes do shortcuts, and we need to think about the bicycle effect. We need to think about the long term. Of course, we need to think about the short term, but we need to we're investing in real estate. We're thinking about long-term effects, things that have 20-year lifespans, depreciation. And if we're thinking too short term and things go wrong, well, can you make it an additional 4 or 5 or 6 years? So fortunately, I've got some great mentors who've been through 3, 4, 5, 6 cycles and seen it. So yeah, appreciate you, Guillermo, for having us on. Adrian, you're always amazing partner to be on with. But happy holidays, happy New Year, Merry Christmas, and happy Hanukkah, and look forward to seeing you guys soon. So I'll let you take it from here. All right.
Take care. Merry Christmas to you too, Chris, and happy New Year. Happy
You too.
Hanukkah. Are you muted?
Thank you. Appreciate that. I was on mute there for a second. So Peter Chalakis, is there a value in having preventative maintenance database for each frequency-based task and checklist? What do you think about that?
I need to understand the question first, so I'm going to take a second.
Well, I'll take a shot at it. And so what we used to do in mining is that we had SOPs, right? And they were not only were they schedule based, but they were trigger based. So rather than having things based on just a frequency of cycles, let's say, for example, you change your filter every 3 months. Well, if you haven't run your AC or your furnace, you don't need to change the filter. So it was based on frequency based tasks, or miles driven versus months. And then we would have SOPs that would be triggered based on all those events. And we would capture the trigger for those events on a regular basis, like the metering, the reading of that. We used to do it manually, but now I see it, with all the IoT that's in place, having those preventative checklists in place to trigger that event. And I do imagine, following on Chris's point earlier around a workflow, where a workflow that is triggered an event, and then that notifies the resident maybe to change the furnace. So they've been running their fan all summer, and that's accumulated a lot of engine hours. Then we should do this particular piece of maintenance. And I hope that's what you're talking about, Peter. Anything to add on that, or at least my interpretation of the question?
I believe you explained it pretty well.
Cool. I'm going to take it off now. Oh, hi. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about kind of land on two major audiences: operators, and then call them operators, PMCs, and then owners. So when you take a look at operators, what did you see in 2024? What do you see in 2025? What gift would you give to them?
I see for operators, the larger operators taking over more assets, growing. The smaller operators, trying to stay the size that they are. It's been a trend for years, and it's accelerating, right? On the third-party management side of things. I give them the gift of consistency, some consistency tools, because God knows they need them. When you cater to 20, 30, 50 different ownership groups, each one of them have their own ways of doing things. You really need some consistency. You really need to find some ways to run things like, technology, people, everything. Everything has to be as close as possible to a good, consistent running cycle, because you're getting buried. There's a lot of turnover in third-party management companies currently as we speak, high level turnover because of the lack of consistency. Now, this is a general statement. Some companies are doing better than others. So obviously, but the third-party management side of business, it's very challenging again, and it's not getting any better for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. Economy, I don't think is just gonna turn around overnight. Interest rates are higher than they were before. Agree with Chris that they're not like high, generally speaking, if we're looking at the last 40, 50 years, historical rates. But then there were many companies that purchased assets when the rates were low. They got them with floating rates. Now the rates are going like 3 times the rates that they bought them for. It's a problem. It's a real problem. So that would be for me the gift of consistency. For asset managers, I think I have one gift. A owner's representative to actually have your eyes on it, to team up with your asset managers and look at your asset physical integrity, at a physical aspect of your properties. Asset managers are a great number of people, but they're not trained to to see structural issues, deferred maintenance. They might occasionally see during their visits, but it's just not what they do for a living. So this could be a true gift, that an investment in hiring someone, a contractor, or even like hiring a in-house person to be a owner's rep will pay huge benefits, to be kind of like the watchdog for for how the third-party management groups are
Almost like an investor relations kind of person.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're saying operators, they're getting squeezed right now. We saw that in 2024, or they probably didn't start the year feeling it, but they ended up feeling it pretty heavily in 2024. 2025, that's going to continue. And so the gift to them is an ownership representative that can help them understand and explain. And their obligation is to steward that role, steward that relationship and the owner's interests, versus just operate the entities and report back.
Yeah, it's that's why it's called that's why it's called ownership. When you outsource something, including the management part, you outsource the ownership of that function. So it's not yours anymore. And when someone is doing it for a fee, I won't say that fee management companies, they're all bad. And I don't start with thinking that they're bad. I'm just saying that there's so much going on, staff shortages, right? There's so many moving targets that you really want to have your eyes on it, not just from a numbers perspective, from a physical perspective, because Chris mentioned earlier, you're gonna look at resale value for the assets when you try to sell. What is gonna look like? What shape is it gonna be in when you put it on the market to sell? And if there's the fair maintenance, that's being picked up first.
Well, that's the interesting thing that I think that part of my observation and my prediction and my gift is that it may have been too good of a good times for the last 3-4 years, where their motivations they diverged between owners and operators, and so there's been distractions. Owners are distracted and operators are distracted, and there's a lot of money being made, and I hope, or my observation is that as we kind of got into Q4 and Q3 last year, their motivations became very, very, very clear. As renewals came up for operators or for third parties, as all that came to the truth, and there was some bad news that had to be told. Right, we're not making money. Maybe you've got to write a check. Right, so telling bad news is very hard to do, versus kind of update everything's up and to the right. And so I think that PMC or third parties went through this kind of like slap upside the head of what their true role is to operate and steward these assets. And now I hope that operators will be the innovators in the industry, because I think that all of these contracts are now up for grabs, because every owner is kind of upset, right? There's not an owner. I would say there probably is very hard to find an owner in the entire ecosystem that is thrilled with 2024, right? And so they all have a reason to be upset about somebody. And since they do the job of owning, then it's like the finger is pointed at the operator, at the third parties first. And so they want to change things up. Just like you might change your personal fund manager, you want to change things up because you want to see what happens. And so I hope, my prediction for 2025 is that operators are going to bring innovations to the owners instead of the owners bringing innovation to the third parties. And third parties are going to have to compete on innovation versus competing on just staff or being around. That's my prediction. And so my gift for them is playbooks and ways to understand how these innovations can be tested and brought to life, and ultimately, a centralized function to be able to execute on these playbooks and execute on the innovation when it comes to scale. Because I don't think they're very good, because of the way that real estate is set up. They're not great at innovating, and because the way the contracts are set up, they're not great at introducing change. And so my gift to them is the path to innovation, because I think that if they're not going to innovate, owners are going to expect them to be innovators, because the owners aren't the innovators. It's like if I'm an owner and I'm coming to my third party with ideas, then I don't think you're doing your job right now. I already don't think you're doing your job. And that's that's how I'm going to show it. So I hope that operators step up and be the stewards of innovation in the industry, because they're the ones that are operating. They're the ones with the hands and the levers. And I expect that the circumstances of their fee rates right now are going to drive new ways of competing.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing that already. Conversations that I had throughout the year this year, talking to owners, for the most part, asking, what do you do for this? What do you do for that? Like, what do you go for? Resources, technology, or you name it. They will just say, we'll just defer this to the property management.
Yeah.
So that I'm seeing that has been my experience, right? They're hands off for the most part. They Hey, that's what the third party is for. We'll let them sort it out. We'll let them vet technology, and when they're thinking something is gonna help, could be helping us, they're bringing it over to us. We'll look at it.
Yep. We got another question from Peter here. We may have touched this in this. I'll let you take a first shot at this one here. Very little visibility into actual labor, material, and productivity.
Yes, that's a tremendous comment, Peter, and thank you for saying it. Um, technology is available out there right now to make that possible. And it has been to a certain level before, not so developed though, I will say. Like, it was kind of there, but it wasn't really working properly. Now there's technology that's focused just on maintenance and the functionality. That functionality is built in, and it actually works. And I'm a KPI. I'm a believer. I'm a fanatic, KPI fanatic, and I'm super excited to know that there's product out there that actually helps management. Like, they could actually structure their own award ceremonies and bonus programs based on those KPIs.
Wow.
Because there's stuff that there's programs that have data integrity. Once a work order is assigned to a particular individual, they can print it and give it to a leasing agent to close. They're the only ones that they could close it. Not even the manager has an override power. So that's very powerful, and they're forced into completing it, so it's not staying pending, and it creates the accountability that we all needed, and it's all captured. The data is captured, so you could tell how much time the person spent average per day, like being on the job, being on work orders, how many tickets they completed in average per day, and so on and so forth. So there's no way around. There's no guessing game here. It's strictly numbers, strictly KPI. So
I think that the challenge that I've experienced implementing this in the past is we did a bad job of explaining why this is important, right? We did a bad job of bringing them along in the journey and helping them I'll tell you a story. So this is what we did. So we were doing field operations, right? And we put, this is before the world of air tags, but imagine an air tag that was GPS kind of censored. And we would track people all over the place, right? Because we were really wanted to figure that out. What were people doing? And pretty soon we found them in toilets. We found them on dogs. We found them all over the place versus actually tracking what we were trying to solve. We didn't do a really good job of explaining what we were trying to solve for. And, to your point, to Peter's point, there is a lack of data there. We do need to understand what is the right level of data for the right level of decision that we need to try to achieve. Because sometimes number of tickets per week is good enough, right? And you work with those numbers, but having, I've had mixed results in trying to track at the infinite level, and having an agreement of introducing data as a way of actually creating change starts with maybe fuzzier numbers, but hey, here's how we're going to start tracking things. We've got one more here from Dixie. These conversations for what we just going to be effective, resources, expertise today, ops try to lead these conversations. The value of the owner is diminished. So I think what Dixie's saying is that for the conversations around value to the ownership, ops try to lead the conversation, but maybe they don't get the credibility that they deserve. Is that how you read that?
They need to be with resources, with expertise. So I'm guessing here a little bit. These conversations need to be with resources, with expertise. Um, with resources. So I guess in order to have the conversations, you have to have the proper resources. The comment was in regards to tech solutions and innovation. Thank you, Dixie,
Yeah, thanks, Dixie.
for clarifying. Uh, Tech solutions with expertise. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
they definitely have to buy in. I think that there's something that we've done in the past, of not fully bringing them along on the journey and helping them be involved in the decision-making process is something that leads to change management failure. And we've talked all throughout today that change management is a big part of this conversation, creating clean communication lines with the people that are feeling the change. I know on our side, we've worked hard to really try and make sure that those that are coming on board to our product to solve this problem understand why and really align the change with their best interest. Because it's not often, things aren't often bought that way. They're bought and they land in your lap, and now you got to do something with this. And I wasn't involved in why. We talked about operators. Let's talk about owners, and we'll close it out. Owners, what did you see in 2024? What do you expect to see in 2025? What gift would you give for owners?
Well, owners, I think the right position owners, have made some great. There's some good to great returns. There are not too many out there. Also, I think that lots of them have money sitting on the sidelines. So I think the gift to them could be some foreclosed assets, so they
Sure.
could they could buy them at a discount, right? If they're ready for that, they have some cash sitting on the side. There's a lot of cash on the sidelines. That I'm hearing that a lot, and it's also been hard at a SFR conference that you and I share. You and I've been on. I think like 40% of the vendors, the service providers that had booths at the conference, they were lenders. So
Yeah.
it's not people are not borrowing. They're not buying money now because they're feeling it's expensive. Thinking like 2-3 years ago they were just like 2-3% interest rates, so they're waiting. Especially now, it's the waiting was with the elections. Now that the election has ended, we're entering a new administration. It's gonna be very interesting how these things play. But again, I don't think that something spectacular or something like magical is going to happen in 2025. My gift to them is patient, and like I said, hopefully some really bad operators out there that haven't done the right thing, ran some properties into the ground, receiverships, take them, buy them, make them better, make people's life better, residents, and also your employees' lives better too. That way, that's my gift to them.
I saw a similar side. I took a look at the supply that's coming on, right? So you got institutional investment raising its pro rata with respect to investment in the industry. You've got pension funds that normally were just in commercial moving into residential. This is a big asset class, and it's attracting a lot of attention. And professional ownership is coming into play more so than ever before. And I guess for the operators in the call, they may want to hear this, but like to your point, I'd like to give owners. I predict that things are going to get tighter for owners. There's going to be some very uncomfortable conversations where there's going to be some checks that have to be written, right, to support there's going to be some cash calls that have to be written to support some of their assets. There's going to be some mortgages that come up that are also uncomfortable, and that's going to be a new operating number. So my gift to owners is the permission to double click on your operators. And if the pressure doesn't come from owners to create innovation is not going to happen, and both sides lose money. And so the buck stops with the ownership group. So my gift to owners is permission to check the numbers and establish partnerships with your operators, your third parties, to deliver a higher NOI given the new set of circumstances. Like budgeting for 1 to 100 is not practical anymore. Budgeting for 1% interest rates is not practical anymore. Budgeting for insurance premiums from 2019 is not practical anymore. So the new operating order has got to pencil into the underwriting that you're going to do, and the people that you're going to trust to steward this, ensure that they're bought in. So have curiosity around new fee structures that may be partnership oriented. Have curiosity around different ways that your operators are going to present innovation, and be open to that innovation. Because if we're going to put the onus on innovation and driving a higher return on assets to the third parties, then be receptive to innovation on the ownership side of things. Because what we can all agree is that doing it the same way isn't going to work. And so that's my hope for owners, is that my gift to owners, they have permission to double click, and they ask for more they ask for innovation from their operators, because they ultimately, the buck stops with them. Well, this has been a really incredible conversation. Adrian, I have a gift for you. I want to thank you for everything you do in multifamily. You probably don't get a lot of direct gratitude, but running 4 podcasts, all the guests, all the people that you talk to, being on this show today, you and Chris have done a great job of helping educate and create change momentum in the industry. And it's something that the entire industry appreciates. So I appreciate you. I thank you for all the hard work you do. And my gift is gratitude. And I'm grateful for all the work that you do. And I hope that I look forward to working closer with you in 2025. And I look forward to every single conversation we have together. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and you're very kind, Guillermo. I want to say right back at you. You you haven't been around in my world for too long, but ever since you came, it made a difference. I enjoy our conversations. I enjoy everything that you do. It's much needed. I love your grit. I love how you're trying to get a hell yes from people, right? So keep up the amazing work, my friend. My gift to you is double down on what you're already doing in 2025, because I think it's gonna be a year outside of maybe, I guess, our predictions that don't sound the most optimistic. I think that there's also, when there's situations like that, there's also on the other side, there's equal opportunity. It's how do you find a particular opportunity? I know that there's a lot of opportunity for you. Like I said, I'm hoping you decide to double down, go harder in 2025. And I think at the end of the year, you'll be pleased. And thank you for having me. It's been an amazing conversation. I truly enjoy it.
Well, I hope everyone had a chance to, thank you, Adrian. That's outstanding. And I hope everyone had a chance to listen on this. This will be in a podcast probably before New Year's. And follow along on the Getting to Hell Yes podcast. Follow what's the 4 podcasts that Adrian has: Multifamily X, Multifamily Chronicles. What are the other 2?
We have the Multifamily Hangout, and we also have a second Multifamily X, which we called
After Dark.
Tech Talks.
Tech Talks.
Tech
Right.
Talks. It's technology related. It's the newest one.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. I hope everyone to have a wonderful break over the holidays. Get a chance to enjoy the homes and the homes that we live in and the residents that we work with. This has been a wonderful conversation, optimistic, inspiring, and I look forward to chatting with hopefully each and everybody next year. Take care, Adrian. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. God bless you. Take care.